There is no productive economy that this government is investing in. Rather, this government is buying yachts, is buying a jet when the one there is still functional, and then taking 4,000 people on what he calls a climate change conference in Dubai. 4,000 people. The majority of them were concubines that the nation can testify to Dubai. So it's a government of wastage. Nigeria's money that God has blessed us with, this government have come to waste it in every sector. If you ask me the impression, Nigerians, go and ask every 10 Nigerians the impression, 9 will be telling you the same thing. That
former President Obasanjo has come out to hint that in 2027, whether Pablo Escobar like it or not, Tpain is not going to return back to the presidency. Also, there's an activist that spoke in this video. He has, in fact, he finished Pablo Escobar and Wike. You just can't afford not to watch this video to the end. In case today is your first time coming across my video, I want to say a big thank you to you for stopping by. This is Holy Ghost on Platform, a platform that tells you undiluted truth.
There is no productive economy that this government is investing in. Rather, this government is buying yachts, is buying a jet when the one there is still functional, and then taking 4,000 people on what he calls a climate change conference in Dubai. 4,000 people. The majority of them were concubines that the nation can testify to Dubai. So it's a government of wastage. Nigeria's money that God has blessed us with, this government have come to waste it in every sector. If you ask me the impression, Nigerians, go and ask every 10 Nigerians the impression, 9 will be telling you the same thing that I'm telling you. It's a government of pain. It's a government that will be remembered as a government that came to inflict hunger and pain and has not recorded any developmental stride. So it's a government of wastage. Nigeria's money that God has blessed us with, this government have come to waste it in every sector.
Right, let's have your impression about this government. How would you assess the state of the nation right now?
Well, I think I want to start by looking at it contextually. From the very beginning of democracy, the 5 regimes also we have had since the inception of democracy in 1999, the Fourth Republic. The first set of, elected national leaders that we had was General Obasanjo, retired, and Atiku Abubakar as his vice president. That regime was marked by its pursuit of reforms. Nigeria, before them, was considered a pariah state. They were able to eradicate that negative impression. They brought in what we call the GSM today, that is the liberalized telecommunication, which has provided jobs for millions of Nigerians and still doing so. They pursued our debt, cancellation of our debts that we owed internationally. They achieved that. They brought in eggheads to come and rule and to come and preside over the affairs of governance, and they succeeded tremendously. After that government, we had Yaradua, who concentrated on reforms. He concentrated on reforming the electoral process, and then he brought a lasting peace to Niger Delta through the amnesty. And then he concentrated in reforming the civil service. That was another very, great leap in our journey towards a democratic state. And then we had Goodluck Jonathan, who I describe as neither nor, that brought in elements of mediocrity, who actually did not make any mark that you could attach to him like this, but at least he led the nation stable. And then disaster started in 2015 when we brought in Buhari, whose government was a total disaster. And I recall that this present regime, this current government that we have today, were the ones, as a party, APC party, led by the president that we have today, that convinced Nigerians that if we all form a coalition under the APC, Nigeria was going to have a turnaround, because he, with his experience, the military general with his experience, have all the experiences they need, and Nigeria needs to have Nigeria turn around. So in 2015, we believed that story, and Buhari came in. That government was a disaster. Now, I have to go into all this context because I want to show you what led to why we are where we are today. Now, that government of Buhari, we thought we could never see a worse government than Buhari's. And during that 8 years of disaster, there was a formation of what we thought was going to be a new crop of leadership, which now culminated in the 2023 election. Some people now felt that because the other people have participated, at least in the presidential level as president, we should give this current president the opportunity to put to practice and put to effect what he had always preached. He had preached democracy. He had preached rule of law. He had preached defense of human rights. He had preached Nadeko as a former Nadeko person and all of that. So Nigerians said, let's give him a chance. He claimed to have fixed Lagos, highly contentious, but he claimed to have fixed Lagos. Nigeria said, okay, if he fixed Lagos, he claimed to be able to identify talents that fix solutions, that fix problems and bring solutions. People like Yemi Osinbajo as well. So Nigerians said, okay, let's give him a chance. Even though he had come out to say it was his turn, we thought that he was, in fact, he claimed to have been the most prepared person. Because every other president you had, some confessed that they were not prepared. He claimed to have been the one who had prepared all his life for the presidency. And now we gave him a turn. Some of us didn't vote for him, but Nigerians, never mind what the election said and all of that, but it is assumed, we'll not take responsibility for it, since the Supreme Court have said he is the winner. So we gave him the chance. Today, what we have is a catastrophe. We have moved from a disaster that Buhari was to a cataclysmic situation. Now, what is this government identified for and with? I have just named what other governments were identified for and with. Since the president was sworn in Eagle Square, the recurring refrain from every single Nigerian, whether you are in the business sector, whether you are in the corporate sector, whether you are in the civil service, whether you are doing small businesses, or you are an enterprise or industry, the recurring refrain from every Nigerian that you will ask is that this is a government of pain, of hunger, and of anguish. That the only thing they get from this government as feedback of governance is that tariffs are being increased, is that electricity tariff is increased, telecommunication tariff is increased, fuel subsidy that at least we held onto, whether it was right or wrong, whether it was flawed or straight, Nigerians held onto that and didn't give the sharks the opportunity to hike prices in the market. He removed it unilaterally at Eagle Square in a bravado manner, whereas he hasn't thought of any way to cushion what would be the effect, which shows if in fact he didn't know that it was going to create an effect, it shows his lack of competence. If he knew, it shows his wickedness. So both sides of the sword is a two-edged sword. Now he removed it at Eagle Square. Since then up until now, Nigerian citizens cannot tell you these are the measures that this present president has put in place that is ensuring that they Nigerians are having their sufferings ameliorated. There is no ameliorating. When Buhari was there, who I described as a disaster, he set up the Anchor Borrowers Program, which at least the North can say they benefited so much from. He produced a lot of young farmers in the North who are growing local rice. We don't have any such example. Rather, what we have is that in January, we are going to have to pay more taxes. And what is even more annoying is that the man who is put in charge of that committee for fiscal reform, Taiwo Yedele, tells us now that beyond the taxes, the tax collectors, that is the government in place, does not care what you do to make money. In fact, he said that in a Redeemed Church in Lagos. And he said, and I quote, he said, if you are a Ron's girl and you go out to sleep with a man and he gives you money, and you just pay your tax on him, we don't care what you do. And then he said further that any person who is into whatever business, that the law, the tax law, does not anticipate and does not take into cognizance what he does. All he needs to do is to pay his taxes. If you follow that up with the policy of going to free criminals from jail, and you tie it, or there's a connection between a policy of government as spoken by his officials that you don't care what you do to make money, and going to jail to free criminals to get them back in the street. So if you want to extrapolate, you draw a conclusion. The conclusion is that this government has a policy of trying to obliterate any lines between what is moral, what is good, what is legal, and what is legitimate, and what is illegitimate, criminal, or illegal. So that it's a policy of government with evidence. Now, that apart, if you come to government's responses to citizens' cries, this is the government that is guilty of the highest form of what you may refer to as abuse, first, of our electoral system. Since this government came in place, no civil society, practitioner have been able to record a free and fair elections. All the elections that have been done since this government came into place have been flawed, and none of them have had any form of judicial redress. So you have that in place. INEC, that is flawed. That the election that they conducted in 2023 remained a very controversial election, the most controversial election in this country. When we have a very far less controversial election during Yaradua, as the president, admitted that the process that brought me into place is flawed. So I'm going to reform INEC. This government have never for one day acknowledged, despite the figures at our disposal, that they had a flawed election. So that tells you that they don't have any distinction between what is legal and what is illegal. Rather, you find government officials like the Federal Capital Territory, Minister Nick Wike, boasting about his influence in the judiciary. He has boasted about that severally, by implication and overtly, in many different forums. So this government, if you ask me, the impression Nigerians, go and ask every 10 Nigerians the impression. 9 will be telling you the same thing that I'm telling you. It's a government of pain. It's a government that will be remembered as a government that came to inflict hunger and pain and has not recorded any developmental stride. I'll give you an example. Nigerians' maritime economy. The President Bola Tinubu, is from the southwest. That is where you have the maritime economy of this country. Nigeria's maritime economy is about $2.296 billion. That's 7 trillion naira. Now, that economy is totally underutilized. We have it there. The money you say you have saved from subsidy, which you yourself confess that you give to governors, and the states are in such deplorable situation, could have been plowed into developing that industry, and it will have return on investment. Now, Nigeria's textile industry is 6 trillion. 6 trillion. Between 2019 and 2023, Nigeria imported textile materials and clothing to this country to the tune of 1.4 trillion between 2019 and 2023. So we have a huge clothing industry, a huge textile industry. We have a textile factory that was functional in Kaduna. This government has not invested in that. Our mining potential can take us to about $25 billion in 3 years. The potentials we have in mining will take us to $25 billion in 2 years. There is no productive economy that this government is investing in. Rather, this government is buying yachts, is buying a jet when the one there is still functional, and then taking 4,000 people on what he calls a climate change conference in Dubai. 4,000 people. The majority of them were concubines that the nation can testify to Dubai. So it's a government of wastage. Nigeria's money that God has blessed us with, this government has come to waste it in every sector. There is no, our steel is one of the easiest to refine in the world. Our steel potential is huge. We are the second largest, possessor of deposit iron ore in the whole of Africa, next to Guinea. There is nowhere you will turn and you will see government investment. Look at the infrastructure that he's talking about. You will start to build a road that will take forever to build. You are building up till now, nobody knows what is it per kilometer, the cost per kilometer of that road. Umar, who is an engineer and a road engineer, today he will come, he's within the region of 4 billion, next tomorrow is 8 billion, the other day is 1.something billion. He doesn't even know how much it costs. And you are building a road that you started from wherever you started in so-called Lagos area along that corridor, and you stopped there. You said in 2 years that you've done 30, and then you have spent about 3 trillion. That road costs about 15 trillion.
You mean that the government has not impressed you in any form? Is that what you're saying?
If there is anything that has done so well, is to destroy our judiciary, to assault our democracy, like what happened in Arabia. Up till now, Fubara cannot give a historical record of why he was booted with military men out of government house and escorted out of government house like a criminal. Because what was going on there was purely a political crisis that has political solutions. But the government goes there and pulls him out. The man they replaced him with, who is the sole administrator, now spent in 6 months 200 and something billion. That's what he got from federal allocation in 6 months. 200 and something billion naira in 6 months. That's what he got from federal allocation. That is 2 times the budget of my state. So what we are saying is that whatever you are going to have to say about this government will be negative.